All right, this is This Secure, the premiere episode of Is This Secure? I'm Michael, he's Curtis. Hey, babe.
Yes, I am, and so are you.
It's a pleasure to have you with us, and as time moves on, I think you'll find that the level of interactivity with regard to this show is going to increase. You know something, Curtis? I have a feeling like I'm not used to doing this. We're used to doing shows. We've podcasted in the past, and we always did live streams of our podcast. And so whatever happened, happened. And now we're just recording it, and then we're going to post it. And just now, like, I took a breath at the wrong moment, and I started thinking to myself, okay, you know what? False start. Let's restart the recording, Curtis. But that is not the way this can work. We just have to record it live and go with it. So at this point in the show, as a result of our previous podcasting endeavors, I'm accustomed to telling you what the phone number is to call in, but there is no phone number. This show is entirely recorded live, mind you, but recorded nevertheless. But as I say, as time goes on, we'll increase the level of interactivity, and that'll be that. Do we need to introduce ourselves? I don't think we need to. I think we should just do the show. As time goes on, we'll talk about ourselves. We'll sort of touch on things, and people over time are going to learn about us. And I think that's the best approach to this, don't you?
Yeah, I think it's probably better to say, and of course, in perfect fashion, we didn't plan out this, but I think we should talk about what the very generic mission statement for the first version of this podcast is. And just like anything technological, it's going to grow and change over time as we adjust to what we want to talk about, what the audience, as you all interact with us, it'll change. So this is let's not even call it version 1. This is the beta release of Is This Secure? And we're just going to go live with it. Who cares if this is the 5th time we've recorded this intro? It might even be the first time. You might figure that out. But yeah, I think we should just give that mission statement very quickly, and I'll give you my point of view of it, and then you can refine as you want to. I think the main purpose of why you want to listen to this is Michael and I are enthusiasts of technology. We're professionals in technology, and we care about the way you interact with it. And the world of tech changes so quickly that it's nice to have a moment to stop, say what's out there, what do we think is coming, what have we seen in the past that informs us for the future, and just have a fun conversation at the same time. So we're not changing the world. We're talking about the fast-paced world of technology.
And as it relates to my contribution to this show, my vision for this show, my vision of this show as we move into the future is to gain enough popularity that eventually I start receiving free technology products from vendors. That is really my only concern. And if that, no, in reality, what I think my approach to the show is to analyze tech from a curmudgeonly standpoint. I mean, I'm only 43, but I feel like I'm of advanced age in my soul. And there's a lot of stuff that I see happen in the tech sector, the language I hear people use, the way issues are framed, the way people engage in conversation about tech. Thank God for that cough button. I don't know what it is. It was like, I swear to you, Curtis, 45 seconds before we started recording, it was as if I had a long case of emphysema that I'm on the downhill swing on.
Right.
But I get very frustrated in the way people talk about tech. We go listen to, pick your tech show, whatever it is. It could be Leo Laporte, whatever tech show it is you happen to listen to out there. These people all speak the same way. They all have the same opinions. They all have the same reactions. I can tell you what they're going to say before they say it, and they celebrate everything. They don't cast doubt on anything. They have an upbeat attitude about everything. Everything's a great idea. Everyone is a genius. Some guy who lives in Silicon Valley and just manages to squeeze money out of venture capitalists and never produce anything, a guy like that is celebrated on these types of tech shows. As long as you can be a guy that has the word startup thrown after your name or around your name in some way, somehow, somewhere, these people will celebrate that person. And I'm just tired of it. I'm tired of the hands around the world approach to tech analysis and tech news. And so I have a more jaded point of view as it relates to tech. And I like to make fun of people and things and just generally approach all of this with a lot of cynicism. But having said that, you will at least come away, I think, from my take, maybe with an interesting perspective that you hadn't considered before, and you might know a little bit more about whatever particular topic happens to be discussed at that moment than you did prior to us talking about it. And I think Curtis and I have very different approaches to doing this show, and that's what makes us a good mix. I swear to you, Curtis, is there a breathing machine in here?
Well, we have a new Bluetooth smart device breathing apparatus we'll give you.
It's a new startup.
It's a CPAP machine,
there's
too.
a lot of synergy associated with it, and we really think that if they can just get the venture capital to get it off the ground, every emphysema sufferer is going to rest easily at night knowing they're connected via Bluetooth. That's in our future. So go ahead.
I would like to say, Michael, that I think that's a great upbeat take you have there. I'm really excited for where you're going with it. And I want to remind you that Is This Secure is a startup also. So there's all kinds of great reasons to be excited about
We
what you
actually
just said.
are. Who's the guy that started that podcast website and then it got bought out years? And Jason Calacanis. We are the Jason Calacani of podcasting. We're startup. We're a startup. Woo! My dead grandmother would be so proud right now to know that I'm
You
a
did it.
startup. I crossed the threshold.
You did it. You did it,
Okay.
Michael.
Well, we've got a
Well,
lot of stuff to talk about, and I have a bunch of big stack of stuff here, but I'm looking at the things that Curtis wants to talk about. And at the top of the list is this tweet about Elon and Twitter and what's happening over there right now. It's from a guy named Gergely Oros.
I really wanted you to say this.
Gergely Oros. I have no idea, but his tweet reads as follows: Scoop, : Elon Musk just sent an email to all staff outlining Twitter 2.0, writing, "It will need to be extremely hardcore, long hours, high intensity. People need to click yes to confirm." Imagine you have to click yes to keep your job.
Right.
Yes or no. And like that's one of those moments where you just move your mouse pointer from one button to another and then back to the other and then back to the other. And you consider the fork in the highway that those two buttons represent and just the different twists and turns your life is going to take merely by the physicality of moving a mouse pointer to one piece of screen real estate versus another and then depressing your button with the index finger. That's amazing. Let me
Well,
start
and the
over.
great thing is it's just some electrons on a screen are going to dictate your fate.
This is years and years of mushroom abuse have caused me to see things in this sort of a granular fashion. Okay, so I'll back up here. Scoop, Elon Musk just sent out an email to all staff outlining Twitter 2.0, writing, "It will need to be extremely hardcore, long hours, high intensity. People need to click yes to confirm being a part of this by 5 p.m. Eastern time tomorrow, else," not or else, just else, "they get 3 months severance." More details, and then the thread continues
It
on.
goes on, yeah.
What are your thoughts?
Yeah, so first off, there's Elon buying Twitter, and then you see what all has happened in the last, but it hasn't even, time is compressed in such an interesting way. Has he owned it for a week?
I think he's
Or has it been
coming up on 2 weeks, but
2
it's
weeks?
amazing. I think
Yeah.
there have been now 3 or 4 features that have been rolled out and then immediately rolled back. And it was publicly
Right.
stated, you know what? Twitter Blue, I realize we put that out 45 seconds ago, but we're going to go ahead and step back from that for a moment just to make sure it's rolled out in the appropriate way. And if you listen to people like Scott Adams, there's certain people out there in whose minds Elon Musk can do no wrong. And I think that one of the primary areas in which Elon has shined over the years has been through his ability to extract money from the government. That's the primary way in which I'm impressed with him. I really, honestly, from a tech standpoint, that has never grabbed me nearly as, and I get it. He's started a company that's able to fly rockets up into orbit and then land them vertically without them exploding in a giant gas fireball, and then reuse them. The satellite internet thing, Starlink, that's pretty cool. There is some cool stuff associated with him, but I am primarily, when it comes to Elon Musk, fascinated by his ability to extract money from government. That's what has primarily fascinated me about him. I don't recall what it was that launched me into that tangent just now. You said something about Elon. Oh, it was the Twitter Blue feed. So there are people who watch Elon Musk and they are just totally blown away by him, and they believe that he is a space alien. They believe that he does not share our DNA. They believe that he is in a headspace that none of us occupy. And so when he rolls out Twitter Blue and then 33 seconds later wheels it back in and shuts the garage door, these people say, well, he's so brilliant that he's just working that quickly. You would have a typical company that would roll a feature out or an option or a product, and it would take months, maybe years, for that company to realize the mistakes they've made and to retool. Not Elon. That is the take some people have on all of this.
You know, I just remembered. I said to be excited that you finally made it as a startup, but I forgot that you and I were actually the creators and brain children behind FireFub, which uses the same model of put out a feature before it's been tested. That's
FireFub,
the entire model.
I'm sorry, Curtis. I didn't mean to interrupt there. I feel like, by the way, Curtis and I are not in the same physical location as much as we would like to, just for a moment, allow you behind the curtain. I would like to say that we are recording in my bathroom and Curtis is like reclined in the bathtub and I'm sitting on the toilet seat and we're looking deeply into one another's eyes as we record this. Why the bathroom? That's where I would do it. That's just what I'm saying. But no.
The acoustics. It's what it is.
You're going to want that echo. But that's what I told Curtis, at least. But let's just say there were ulterior motives. But we're using it's a platform, I guess you could say, called Clearwire in order to connect with one.
No, it's Clean Feed.
What's Clear? Why do I? You know what? This is not the first time I've called it Clearwire. What in the hell is Clearwire? There is something. I'm going to look this up. Clearwire.
Well, you might want to clear your search history after you look it up. I'm not sure, but
yeah, it's a telecommunications operator which provided mobile and fixed wireless broadband. You know what? I think that was something related to WorldCom. I think they were a subsidiary or a predecessor of WorldCom. Anyway, go ahead, Curtis. I'm sorry.
Where was I going? Oh, I was made my FireFub joke, and then I wanted to come back to with Elon and Twitter.
Well, hold on. You did not explain FireFub, though. I mean, if you're going to broach the subject, okay.
Let's just understand. FireFub is the browser of the future. If you thought what Elon did with blue check marks is cutting edge, just wait till you find out a browser that does not allow you to type in vowels on odd days of the week, and you can only use consonants on days that are divisible by 3.
All photography viewed in FireFub will be monochrome. And I know Curtis mentioned certain letters of the alphabet not working on particular days of the week, but the browser just entirely refuses to work on Tuesdays. We felt like nobody's going to want to use a browser on a Tuesday. So we went ahead and worked that feature in for you. FireFub. So we'll talk more about FireFub as we progress. And I would appreciate nobody informing Elon of the existence of FireFub. We don't need a hostile takeover.
Well, I kind of disagree because right now the stock for it is, I believe we have 10,000 shares and each one is worth about $260. And I remember the split. You told me that it made sense to go 51.49 with you taking 51 originally. And I can't remember what the reason of that was, but I don't care. I'm ready for the payout.
See, I thought the stock, as my brain got twisted for a moment, and I couldn't figure out whether it was STALK or like, oh boy, call the police. It's happening again. Look out the window. There he is. Look, right there by the bush. He's right there. No, I was thinking that the stock price was actually in negative territory where we actually had to pay people to take a share. That's apparently not what happened, though. Okay, so Elon Musk sent this out. People have to click yes or no whether they want to keep their job. Gergely Oros, who is this guy?
Yeah, so he's a writer, is what I believe. Pragmatic Curl, I think.
What is he, a tech writer?
Let's look and see, because I don't have that.
It doesn't matter. But once we find
so,
out who he is, we're not going to care, I promise.
Oh, no, he works. Wait, this actually makes a lot more sense now as you dig into it. His website is about getting engineering talent. So it looks like it's like a headhunter group. So this actually benefits him probably because he's hoping a lot of people don't swipe right on that email. But the thing about it that I think is weird, and I want to get into reasons why you believe and then I believe that Elon bought Twitter, but what did he think he was getting? Like, he had to have known, like, when you show up after purchasing it and then you tell people Twitter 2.0 is going to be quote unquote extremely hardcore, long hours, high intensity. Obviously, he doesn't believe that was the Twitter 1.0. So you're going to take the team that is there today and just with the threat of losing their job, suddenly make them work harder for the same pay and longer hours and somehow get a positive result out of it. That just makes me wonder what it's like to work for him, because this is the same model that I've seen reporting of with him for Tesla when he was trying to ramp up production because they had the whole problem of being behind on delivering orders. So he was sleeping on the floor in the factory and working nonstop and firing people if they wanted to take days off. I don't know. Like, Twitter 2.0 probably is going to suck.
Well, think about it this way. He already probably wants to fire 75 to 80%, maybe more, of the workforce. So why not just put some sort of a choice, some sort of a Hobson's choice out there to the broader employment base, those who still are there, and sort of cull the herd, remove the chaff and the wheat from one another. It seems like you're going to get a bunch of weirdos who don't mind working insane hours, and those were the only people, weirdos who want to work insane hours, who don't have any family obligations, who are smart and are probably going to make more money than they did before, and he, at the same time, is going to get the benefit of culling the herd that he already wanted to cull anyway, rather than he make the decision himself to fire them.
Yeah, I mean, there is a piece of that to it for sure. I think it's a very quick way to say, and getting 3 months severance for doing nothing, not clicking yes. I mean, that works. But it's just, it's weird to me in the grand scheme of things that why would you buy it? Wouldn't it have been smarter to start the new competitor to Twitter instead?
I don't think it would
work. Why would you come in? You don't, well, I mean, it's hard to, like, getting a social platform to actually be able to succeed and grow at the level that a Twitter or a Facebook or TikTok, any of these things, it's not that, even though people would like to tell you they have the formula to make it happen. I mean, it's lots and lots of money being just pumped into the marketing of the thing, whether it's good or bad. It doesn't really matter as long as you can market it well. I would reference TikTok as that. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, think if he had started his own Twitter clone. Maybe not Twitter clone, but
about TikTok.
Well, no, I'm saying if he had.
Okay, so Clean Feed is now dropping packets like crazy.
Oh, is it? I'm sorry. Well, I was just going to say, if Elon had started his own Twitter, he would have done so predicated on the concept of free speech. That would have been front and center, his presentation to the public as to why this needed to exist. And in the course of presenting it to the public in that way, he would have been tarred and feathered as a white supremacist. He's already tarred and feathered as an apartheid supporter because of his South African roots. And there is a segment of the public that interprets the phrase free speech. They equate that with white supremacy, racism, bigotry, homophobia, and all of the ists. So I think it would just fail from the jump because he would get no support from the mainstream. All of the entrenched social media platforms would align against him. All of the mainstream media would align against him, and it would go nowhere. Look at Donald Trump and his Truth Social, which is an abysmal failure, and it has been from the jump. I think a big reason that, by the way, Trump's Truth Social is a big failure. Right out of the gate, the name is terrible. The name implies some sort of an agenda, some sort of a political agenda. Truth Social. You want the truth? Come here. We're going to give it
together
to
anyway.
Yeah, actually, that's a great point. They don't belong in the same paragraph, let alone the same sentence.
Right.
So I think that it simply would have just been shut down by entrenched interests who would level the same criticisms at him that they're leveling now. The big advantage here is that he's already got a turnkey operation, and he can sort of use the inertia and momentum of that to turn it into something else. But I think that he knew he had to. Didn't he, when he made the offer to buy Twitter, didn't he then back out of the offer, and then he was taken to court and essentially forced to complete the transaction? Isn't that how that went?
That's the way I understand it, which also takes me back to, so you mentioned Truth Social and how that was pretty much dead on arrival. There's already a competitor to Twitter in Mastodon, which is just a federated messaging system, very similar to Twitter, but it's not sexy in any way. There's nothing interesting about it. It's pretty much, if your community doesn't exist already, create a server, add it, and it's all federated with the rest of the Mastodon network, and you can add and hide anything you want to. So you have complete control over it to be whatever level of truth or accuracy or complete conspiracy, whatever you want. You get to moderate your server the way you want to. So that already exists out there. So then if Elon's coming into it thinking that he's got something different, that he can make Twitter better, there's already competitors who are trying to do the version of Twitter that he's claiming he wants. So that doesn't make sense to me. There's really only one thing that there's one path potentially that Twitter has value to, and it speaks to the thing he would complain a lot before he was pushed to actually complete this deal.
I think I know what it is, but I'm really curious as to whether you're going to say what I'm thinking. Go ahead.
You probably do. I'm interested in hearing it, but I'll go ahead and say, and you tell me if it's right or not. I think the active live user base, getting them, mining it basically for real people who are interacting on it, is what he wants, is that user base. So he wanted to understand how many bots there were to know whether that core is there that he wants. And then if so, the blue check mark, having to pay for it, was the perfect way to get validated users. And that would work. It's actually a good plan to say, okay, how about you pay for the ability to be a validated user and get a blue check mark or whatever color check mark you get for validating. Now I have a user base that's been validated as real people who are real purchasers of products and actually customers of everything that he already is selling. So that user base, but then that's where I stop. Okay, you want to have a known active user base that you can either market to or whatever, but I don't know if he doesn't seem like the kind of guy who cares about just advertising. So what is it that he wants out of Twitter? So was that what you thought I was going to say?
Well, you sort of you veered into it a little bit when you were talking about the notion of verified users. But I think what he wants to do is he wants to start a bank. I think he wants to start the world's largest bank. And I think that he initially wants to start off enabling, and he has essentially said as much in an interview that he recently did, which was geared toward advertisers, primarily those who had recently stopped advertising on Twitter. He sat down with some chick and they talked for a good period of time. I don't know how long, but I heard a few clips of this, and one of the clips I heard was of him talking about how he would like to facilitate financial transactions from one Twitter user. I think we're having more problems with clean feed here.
We are.
He'd like to facilitate payments from one Twitter user to another. He would like to enable and that in itself is going to be the trigger for the verification. The verification doesn't need to be the result of somebody choosing to have the check mark. And further, beyond that, I think that is going to be such an unhip thing going forward anyway. Who's going to want to actually show to the world that they paid money to have a check mark next to their name? Because that's essentially all you're going to get. You might get some additional controls over how Twitter and the content on Twitter are delivered to you. But other than that, you're going to be primarily just paying so that you can have a check mark next to your name. And then everyone in the world who sees you is going to know, oh my God, this douche nozzle paid money to have a check mark next to his name.
Right.
Look at that. The elitist tinge that was previously associated with having the check mark will be gone because it'll be open to all the rubes everywhere. And so I don't even think that I think going forward, eventually we're going to find it to be the case that paying money to Twitter has nothing to do with getting a check mark. In fact, there won't even be a pay to get a check mark system. I think what's going to happen, he's going to turn it into a payment system. Twitter users are going to be paying one another through it. In order to cash out, they're going to have to connect their Twitter account to a bank. Boom. There's your validated user. He spoke, like, out of his mouth came the words, I want people to be able to write checks. I want people to be able to... He wants to be a bank.
That's the only play that could make sense. So I've heard him talk about how he wants to have a real identity user base, and that he accepts the idea of multiple versions of Twitter, where you have parody Twitter, you have meme Twitter, and then you have real Twitter, real ID, basically the version of that. And that real ID version matches what you're saying for a banking system. The problem is, and he has to be smart enough, like I have to believe somewhere with all the, because I don't think he's the smartest guy in the room when he shows up to these places. I think he's the most strategic person in the room, which is different. And a strategic person will outlast a smart person 9 times out of 10 because they're playing a different game. And so he has to be strategic enough to know that when he buys it, the backlash he's going to get is going to limit the number of people who are going to be in the system. And he needs them. He needs to be all things to all people, basically, with Twitter for it to be successful. Or at least I think he does, or else he becomes a marginalized social media network that will die. Nothing dies quicker than the social media that parents go to. You know, like that's Facebook's problem, is that the people who made it successful before have aged out in terms of being what you market to. And so new social media products are taking over that I don't even understand, you know, like they're different the way you use it. And that's fine. That's the way the world goes and everything when the technology and just the general term, not the idea of computer technology. It's always growing and changing, and it's leaving behind a set of people who don't want to keep up with it. And that's what social media is doing, is going into a new generation. And if that generation for Twitter is to become a banking system, I think that he had to have been strategic enough to know that he's going to lose just the fact that he's the one who bought it, and the way one segment of the world population sees him is going to alienate it. So maybe he's playing a longer game, and he assumes that 10 years from now, people aren't going to care who owns Twitter, and he will have made something so secure and what people stay is enough to survive a very lean time. But I just don't see it. That doesn't seem like a smart move. Like the smarter move, if you want to get to a banking system, to me, is get yourself tied into Amazon in some way. Because Amazon is already there. It's already getting to where you want to be, and it has as many unique users as Twitter does. And we already know purchasing history. There's already credit systems in place for it, payment transactions, vendors like crazy. You need to help transition. If Elon wanted to spend, $44 billion, use that to transition Amazon into becoming something social at the same time that it's a marketplace, rather than turn Twitter into a marketplace or bank.
Well, there's no doubt that $44 billion investment. I would like to know what that value has fallen to since the
right.
I mean, even 10 minutes before the purchase was complete, it was way overpriced. I don't know. I
Right.
don't know of anybody who has ever heralded Twitter's ability to serve ads to people. I don't know that anyone has ever looked at Twitter and said, "Ah, yes, there's a big moneymaker. Ah, yes, there's just a machine churning out Ben Franklin's one right after the other." I mean, obviously some money was being made. Look at the thousands of people that are being fired. You can't have all those engineers working somewhere that's not making money. But having said that, like, here's a great example. When I'm on Twitter and I see an ad come across my feed, what do? I block the advertiser right away. Boom. You know what? Half of the time I spend on Twitter, if I'm bored, it's some people pick their scabs. What I do is I get on Twitter and I just go down my feed and I block advertisers. And then when the novelty of that has worn thin, I proceed to the license counter at the DMV and I get my serial killer looking photo taken. That's what
best.
I do on Twitter.
That
Having said all of
okay,
this,
so
I will just quickly state this is all entertaining, but I'm finding it to be infinitely more entertaining watching people on Twitter publicly getting fired by Elon Musk. People who work for Twitter are actually getting fired on Twitter by their boss. This has got to be unprecedented. I don't think this has ever occurred where a boss is firing employees publicly and they're finding out about it for the first time on Twitter. I don't think that's ever occurred. Not that I'm aware of.
just so you know, I just had a 5-second silence that I know you were talking.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, I really think that we need to find a solution. Clean Feed, for those of you listening, as I said earlier, we're not in the same physical location. So Clean Feed allows you to have an audio connection between two people that's low latency and sounds good. But the problem is, and we've used this several times just preparing to do this, and generally it's worked fine. So as the universe would have it, it's going to start messing up when we actually record our premiere broadcast, but that's okay. What we need to find is something that doesn't operate in a web browser. I think that's a big chunk of the problem here. And because it's operating in a web browser, like I don't think there's any way to optimize packet routing here. You can't like go into the Clean Feed application in the browser and tell it what port number to use in your router and optimize the traffic in any way. It's all just port 80, like everything else.
443. It's
Isn't 443 the one that was closed down for security?
Isn't that the secure SSL?
Oh, is it?
Yeah. Well, is it 443? I should know that like automatically.
You should,
But,
Curtis. Why are you hosting a tech?
Yeah.
It's excusable
Is
for
this
me not to
secure?
know, but
yeah. Okay. Yeah. Pause the. I was right.
is it?
Yes. 443 is
Okay. Well,
SSL TLS certificate. Okay. So what I was going to mention is that with this great tool, Clean Feed, that has worked successfully multiple times, the difference this time is I hit the record button. And like the moment I hit record, which means they should be saving on their servers a copy of our combined conversation, the moment I hit that, you started to drop packets.
oh, really? That's nice. See, that's what you want is the recording comes out okay, but you can't actually hear one another during the recording, which I find to be a really entertaining feature. You see it as a bug. I see it as a feature. The recording winds up being far more interesting for the listener.
It's like playing Marco Polo as you're doing a podcast.
Well, it's going to be interesting to watch and see what happens with Twitter, and we will all be paying close attention. Stadia, you may recall Stadia, which was Google's gaming platform. This is such a great example of why I stay away from any product essentially Google comes out with that hasn't existed for at least a decade. If it hasn't been around for at least a decade, it's probably going to wind up on the chopping block. Stadia refunds are going to start this week as Google provides more details on what to expect. After the abrupt shutdown, by the way, this is from getpocket.com. After the abrupt shutdown of Google Stadia in September, Google is starting the process of refunding players for their game purchases and hardware, and that does include controllers people bought. So if you bought a Stadia controller you're actually going to get your money back. I don't know if you have to send
You
it
know
back or
why?
not. Why?
So those controllers are locked to their system, and
They can't
there
just
was a
unlock
big,
them?
no. So there was a big backlash about it because everyone said this was going to create a
Well, that is
massive
lame
wave.
to begin with. That is lame.
So what they're saying is it's a good controller. I haven't used
I
it.
don't
but
doubt that, but why that limitation? I mean, I know
Right.
why, but
Yeah, it's dumb because they said just unlock it to where it can be used for mobile devices, whatever else you want to, not just through their system. And I guess instead what they said is we'll just refund you for it. Instead.
okay,
It's
so
cheaper
that's
for them.
that's the environmentally friendly. Can you imagine all of the carbon produced, all of the energy wasted manufacturing those
those.
controllers, all the plastic extracted out of petroleum in order to manufacture all those probably millions at this point of controllers? And they're just, instead of
Well, it
making
didn't
them
sell that
functional.
well.
Oh, I'm sorry. I overshot. Okay. The tens of controllers that Google shipped to be used with Stadia, I'm really upset over the environmental impact. This process, by the way, of giving people their money back is going to take until mid-January. Can you believe that? Here's a tech company that exists in the year 2022. They specialize in the concept of moving information from one place to another instantaneously. I can go to Google and I can type the word spoon, and I will, within a nanosecond, have every publicly visible instance of the use of the word spoon on my screen, so long as I'm willing to scroll long enough. Yet, when it comes to refunding your money for this piece of crap gaming platform that Google erroneously came up with, it's going to take until mid-January to get your money back. It's just par for the course. And I swear to you, there are times when I look at Google and I just think to myself, you know what? I think I am just going to stay on iOS. I don't really want anything to do with their ecosystem. And I sat here and I watched the approach of the release of the Pixel 7 Pro, and I thought to myself, my goodness, this phone and the Pixel Watch together, oh boy, is that going to be an amazing combination. I can't wait. And then it came out, and of course it's tepid and lukewarm, and the upgrades to the 7 Pro really are nothing more than revisions to the hardware and software that should have been the case in the 6 Pro a year ago. The watch is utterly unimpressive. It repeatedly disconnects from your mobile device. It has pathetic battery life. It's incredibly fragile. It looks pretty, but it doesn't function as a watch. And in addition to that, it's over $300, I believe, to get this watch. Meanwhile, I can go to Apple, who have been developing wearables now, watches for what, a decade now? Didn't the first Apple Watch come out about 10 years ago? I mean, if not 10 years ago, it's close to it. But no, I'm supposed to go. I'm supposed to go spend a comparable amount of money to buy a watch from a company that just started making them for the first time and is nearly a decade behind Apple. It makes absolutely no sense to me whatsoever. And I will say that while I respect the Nexus devices, I'm sorry, Nexus. Look at me, boy. I just went
That's
into
when they were good.
I just went into boomer mode there. That hasn't been around in a decade in itself.
Post that on your Facebook.
Yeah. I do respect the Pixel devices just because of the fact that it's the only Android experience in existence where you can buy an Android device and know that you're going to be assured a certain number of updates. You're going to be assured of the latest version of Android for, 3 or 4 years? I think it's 3 years, which you go buy an iOS device. If you buy the most current generation, you're going to get a minimum of 5. Minimum. I think it's usually 6. I think that the recent advance to iOS 16 cut off a few devices like the 7 Plus. I think the 8 was the only iPhone that was able to, 8 and above were the only devices able to receive iOS 16. And I think that was the first time that Apple cut a series of devices off from the newest version of iOS this soon. So what is the 7 Plus? A 5-year-old device, isn't that right?
Yeah, I still have one that one of my kids uses as a video watching device.
My daughter has one as well. And it's actually still a very usable device.
Well, that's the thing is that so Apple, all the complaints you might have about them and their walled garden and their app system or app store, all of that, they're valid and we can talk about it. But they do build hardware that is purely focused on making it feel like your experience is fast. And that translates pretty well for a long period of time. But when it hits the cliff, it falls fast. And they are speeding up the process for letting things fall off that cliff because what they're doing now with the chips. You think it's a mistake?
Oh, big mistake. I mean, to me, that is the biggest selling point when I'm telling someone, when I'm talking to, let's say, someone over 45 or 50, and I'm trying to explain to them why it might be better to use iOS. They're not tech savvy people, which as far as I'm concerned, that's the perfect iOS user, is someone who's not tech savvy. And when I explain to them, you're going to buy this phone and you're going to be guaranteed the latest version of the phone's operating system for 5 or 6 years. That is like the first thing I say to people when I'm explaining to them. I got one of those little teeny tiny sores on my tongue that you get like once every 6 months. It's probably AIDS, but
you mean when you don't take your medicine is what you mean?
Yeah, I'm not keeping the viral load tamped down, but it's making it hard to speak. That's a really auspicious set of circumstances for.
This is our ad break really quickly. We really are working hard to find products that would allow us to make enough money for Michael to finally get the health care and medical, like the medical services he needs. So feel free to donate in any way you can.
I need stitches.
Pigeon. I need stitches.
I need to be stitched up. I can't get it.
Yeah. So the malady of the week this week that we will tag this with is
malady
Michael's
of the
week. Michael's malady of the week.
It's either the emphysema or the stitches. You could insert them both in this one episode, or you could sort of spread them out. I think we reserve stitches for next week. Emphysema this week.
Yeah, I think better to stick with one thing.
Anyway, I think Apple's making a mistake if they start cutting off old devices. It's one of the biggest selling points. I think it's a huge mistake, and that's my thought on that. Yeah. But this Stadia thing just reminds me of everything I hate about Google. You cannot trust Google to stand by a product. I'm surprised that Google Home, their answer to Apple's HomeKit and to Amazon's Alexa, I'm surprised that even still exists. I can't believe they've stuck with that as long as they have.
I agree with that because basically the way I've always looked at Google, well, not always, the way I've been trained by Google to think about their products is if they acquire another company, another startup, and incorporate that service, it's more likely to survive like Nest has, just like YouTube. If they built YouTube,
I hadn't thought about that, but you're right, aren't you?
Yeah, I mean they pretty much only keep the stuff that other people have made.
Well, maybe they just look at it from the standpoint of, well, we paid this money for it,
right? Sunk cost compared to something that they created, and they have a lot of free time, or at least they used to. So go create something fun because I'm still bitter about Google Wave as a product because I really liked that as a all-in-one system for communication.
I forgot about that.
but that's
very 10 years ago.
It is, but that's what started me down the road.
That was like back when you and I first started talking and doing podcasts together. Mm-hmm. Like that's about the era. When would you say we started doing the old podcast together? What year?
Oh, we probably started doing the tech podcast 2010 or 11.
Wow. Really? Wow.
Yeah. Yeah, because you were doing shows and I would join them in 2009. I know for sure because
That's amazing.
Yeah.
So no, we're not just two random people who decide. We've been at this. We are seasoned
I did
professionals.
Go to Grindr to find you, but
well, we were on Grindr anyway. It was incidental. Yeah. We were podcasting and grinding.
Right. So, but yeah. So when it comes to like Google stuff, I'm all about seeing what new thing they do. But when it's in house, I don't get too attached to it anymore. So Stadia, I got access to that through through a friend early on, and I started playing with it. Like, have you ever played the game Destiny?
No.
Okay, so I've never really been interested in that game, but when you signed up for Stadia Pro, you got a coupon for it. So I got it, started playing it. It's a first-person shooter. I don't know, like it played well. Like in the browser, I can't really complain. There's a little bit of lag sometimes with it when you had multiple people connecting, but it worked. And like I typically play Xbox, so I don't play all that often anymore, but I still have an Xbox One. I haven't switched to the new one. But I've used I've used Xbox Cloud on my Android phone and on my Xbox, and I think they do a good job too. But the experience was slightly more seamless on Stadia. So they really had a good thing going, but it was an in-house product. So the moment they got bored with it, they're just going to cut it. So I never really invested into it as my gaming platform. I had Stadia Pro for 6 months, bought a couple games on it just to try out.
Well, you're going to get that refund, Curtis.
Well, so like I hacked the system.
With stop
Stadia.
right there. You don't need to add anything else to it. Just
Right.
leave it with I hacked. Next story, Google's got a VPN. It's
right. So I recently switched from Comcast to AT&T fiber. And first off, we years of us doing podcasts together and just talking, I think we both have a strong dislike of Comcast in terms of their customer service and the product they deliver. And that hasn't changed for me. I got to a point to where my network, and so like I'm obviously being a geek, I care a lot more about how I'm setting up my internal network than the average person. So I'm running my own router. I'm tracking the traffic happening on my network, but all of that was sitting behind a Comcast router because I can't just get past the modem/router. I could turn off features of it, but I would watch that thing drop connection multiple times a day. And if I'm working from home, every time it would drop, of course, that's taking me off the network for me to do my job. So when I found out that I had AT&T fiber available to me, I switched to that. It's been rock solid so far. I'm not ready to give my long-term review because I haven't had it long enough. But when I signed up, they hit you with all these different promos that you can get. One of them was I got 6 months of Stadia for free. Well, the week I signed up for it is when they canceled it. So I'm getting a refund from Google for my free Stadia Pro.
Well, you really hit the jackpot.
Isn't it great? Like it could fund, at least the first episode of this podcast.
I spent the $9 one time and bought a 1 month subscription for Stadia Pro. And where I turned sour on it was when I saw that they did not have any version. I know this is going to sound so stupid. I'm going to sound so noob, so boomer,
I'm ready for it.
So whatever you want to call me. I'm only 43, but I'm going to sound totally boomer. When I searched around and found that there was not a single version of Tetris on Stadia, I was done with it. I was done. I realized these people don't know what they're doing. That they don't understand the broad spectrum of people that this needs to appeal to. Not everybody wants to play a hugely intensive first-person shooter that takes you a month just to learn how to play it. That's why I don't get into games very much, because every one of them feels like a homework assignment to me. I have to learn the controls. I have to learn what the menu options are. I have to learn what this item does. How do I even get to that item? Oh, I can't hand it to her because she's wearing a jetpack? But okay, I see. Well, I mean, like all that crap you got to learn. It just feels like a homework assignment to me. So I don't get into any new games. I've said this before on our shows that we've done together, Curtis. The only game I play is Left 4 Dead, a first-person zombie shooter that came out in 2007. Why? Because I know how to play it and I still extract enjoyment from it. But I'm not interested in the homework assignment associated with playing complex, highly advanced, modern first-person shooter games. It's just not for me. So when I want to unwind, I either play a game that doesn't require me to learn new things, or I want to play something brainless like Tetris. And if I can't sit down and just do that, well, how hard would it be to get licensing for Tetris on your gaming platform? Tetris.
There's open source versions of
I
that
know,
too.
but I mean,
Yeah.
it just was like
But no, I'm
I
saying
want
for-
an
for
all-in.
them.
I know. I just wanted an all-in-one. You're right. They could have just gone with some. They could have written their own version of Tetris in probably 30 minutes.
Yeah. So just to dig into what you're saying there about like the level of depth and immersion you have to do into a lot of games now, like Elden Ring. I'm really interested in Elden
Just
Ring.
the sound of that gives me goosebumps. No,
Yeah, well, like the
I have to
problem
work.
is, yeah, the problem is I already have a life, and it's already hard enough and uninteresting enough sometimes that I have to play through, and sometimes I feel like a non-player character myself. So when I have to go into a game and figure out my motivation in the game and then build up my character over time, and then some person who's a level 20 can come in and take everything from me.
I don't care how many jewels it takes to give the dragon the ability to speak. I have to make sure my kids are brushing their teeth.
Right. Yeah. So it's like I'm interested, but I'm not going to put the time into it. So
No.
But the funny thing though, like here's how much we connect on things. When my family got a Switch, like that, I was just not as much interested in the Switch, but my family was. The first game we bought for it, guess what it was? Tetris.
Yeah, see, my finger's on the pulse. And if I'm going to show up at a game platform and they're going to think that they don't need to provide that sort of thing to the user base, I'm sorry. I need to find Tetris or Puzzle Fighter or some equivalent. And if it's not there, I've got no use for it. You posted this story, Curtis. NASA's huge SLS rocket finally launches the Artemis 1 moon mission. And I had a story about this as well. What do you want to say about this?
Yeah. So it's interesting that it has taken so long to get to the point of finally having a real launch of it that shows, that one of those progress points to where it's actually going to make it to Mars, to the moon. And it just hit me now to think about Elon Musk and Twitter and the fact that he's getting himself heavily inserted into the news cycle right around the time that NASA is launching their system. I just realized that there's a reason behind all of that. It's not an accident. But going back to NASA, this system, have you looked at how they're reusing? This is what surprised me the most about it, that the rocket systems that are going to control the landers or the positioners for the landers when it goes to the moon, those are repurposed from the shuttle system.
Well, see, I'm unsure about that because the story I have here focuses, well, let me backtrack a bit. The story I have here primarily focuses on the fact that the spacesuits for the 2024 mission are not going to be ready on time. And they have 2 spacesuit prototypes, and they are blaming a lack of funding, COVID-19, and technical challenges. And they say the earliest the spacesuits are going to be ready is April 25. And they say that the spacesuit problem isn't the only reason NASA's not going to get to the moon by 24. They say that they're also having delays surrounding the Space Launch System rocket, the Orion capsule, and the lunar lander. And added to the technical challenges they're facing, there's also a lawsuit taking place. Blue Origin, that's Bezos from Amazon, right?
That's right.
Isn't that amazing? You get rich and immediately it's like, I need to fly things now. What is that? What is that rich guy thing about needing to be in the air once you get rich? Anyway, he has sued the government for contracting with SpaceX to build the lunar lander for $2.9 billion. And
because it goes back to what you said earlier, that Elon is really good at extracting money from the government. Well, Bezos isn't bad at it either. And that's obviously ground worth fighting for.
Here's an interesting aside. The new moon landing is part of the, as we said a moment ago, Artemis program, which specifically aims to include a woman and a person of color among the people who will walk upon the moon's surface. See, this is such old person thinking right here. I don't think that in the year 2022 you have to actively seek out people who fit into these little categories for your little moon mission. I think they will just inherently be there. I mean, this is not 1960 where it's all white guys doing everything. There's a wide variety of people working in the sciences, working in the arts, working in whatever field you can imagine may have in the past been locked up by white guys. I mean, like, I don't think you have to specifically set out to seek various demographics out as you're assembling your space team anymore. I think if you just went for the best people you can find, it's going to inherently be a rather varied collection of humanity. That kind of annoys me about this. And they say sending the first woman and the first person of color to the lunar surface and establishing a long-term presence at the moon is a priority for NASA. Never mind not getting anybody killed on the way there or on the way back. They all died, but, you know, at least they were people of color and women who died. That makes NASA feel very good, I'm sure.
Well, we need to have enough people there so we can start populating the moon bases. So just to get that happening to where I can have cousins who were born on the moon.
Well, we are, I guess, at the end of our, there's so much more to talk about, but we're trying to keep these podcast episodes. We even went over what we said. We're going to try and
I was
keep it
thinking about it
under 40. We're at 56 minutes right now. So we obviously didn't succeed. So what we'll do is we'll go ahead and cut it off right here. We're going to try and deliver 2 episodes per week. I don't think that's going to be a problem. It's really not a big deal. I didn't feel like setting things on hold for a moment and just plopping my fat, ever-expanding rear end into this chair to do this. I didn't really feel like it was that much of a thing, you know? It was pretty easy to sit down and do this. So for me, on my end, I don't think it's going to be terribly difficult to deliver a couple of these shows per week.
Yeah,
and
I'm excited for it.
Yeah,
I'll spend an hour less on Twitter so I can spend an hour more with you.
Oh, Curtis, I just got tingly. Okay,
we are in the bathtub together, so it makes sense.
You've just been listening to Is This Secure? I'm Michael, he's Curtis, and we really appreciate it. And I mean, unlike most of the podcasts you listen to, we're not even asking you for any money or anything yet. That's to come, I'm sure, though. You have a great week. We'll talk to you when we see you next. Bye-bye.